Hi, thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about the future of out-of-home and how that is shaping the advertising industry. But you didn't come here to listen to me, so I'm going to ask each of our panel to say a bit about yourself, where you work and what you do. And Rob, as you're sitting beside me, you'll go first.
Yeah, my name is Rob Flessner. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Vugo. We connect brands with passengers in motion inside of rideshares, taxi cabs, eventually self-driving cars, and those types of things. And we do it using data about trips. So we connect brands with actual trips that they want to target. So if you're headed to, say, an airport, we can show you airline advertisements. If you're headed to a sports stadium, we can show you sports-related content. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sijuade. I'm the Director of Digital Out-of-Home for Nicoletix, which is a KiwiBot company. So a little bit about our company is we use assets such as vehicles, trucks, robotics, and digital signage that you see outside of your house every day to create very amazing eye-catching campaigns that drive awareness as well as conversions for brands, which is very important. So I joined Nicoletix last year in June after they acquired my digital out-of-home platform, OnTouchGo, and excited to be on this panel today and tell you more.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm Pedro. I'm the Chief Growth Officer of Mediaplus UK, and Mediaplus is the largest independent media agency group in Europe. We manage about 7 billion of our clients' advertising revenues and into media and various other advertising formats. And yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Trilleras. I'm the CEO and founder of LED Truck Media. We do advertising, moving out of home on LED trucks nationwide and some international markets. And very happy to be here with all these guys. I think it's a fantastic panel, and hopefully you guys can learn more about out of home and moving at home and what's coming up in the next few years. I mean, it's very exciting.
Okay, and how would you describe the current status of out-of-home industry?
As a complete industry?
Yes.
I think it's evolving very fast. I think after COVID, we're stepping out from what it was your traditional market, right? Your billboards and everything else. Now we're going a lot of place media, programmatic, and moving out of home, I believe, thanks to COVID, has played a really big part now, where you can see ads like Vugo, for example, inside rideshares, even wrapping the cars to our trucks and to other type of mobility. Like your robots are perfect, right? And this allows I think we offer a new perspective to out of home because before you have your billboard, but there is not enough retention time, rather opportunity to see. When you come to a one-on-one rideshare, for example, you get exposed to those ads way longer. And we kind of changing the dynamics for those budgets, shifting more from your traditional out of home to moving out of home, even from social media marketing as well. So I think it's evolving. I believe in the next 2 years at least, you're gonna see even more as more providers become players, but also a very heavy international expansion when it comes to that, because in the United States has been growing the past 3 years.
And you may have noticed that we've all got different accents on this panel. So we've heard the US perspective. Pedro, how would you define the status of out-of-home in the UK?
Look, I think it's very exciting. It's probably the most exciting it's been in a long time. There's exactly what you just said, lots of innovation happening. There's lots of ways to engage. Programmatic helps. The ad tech industry has really supported out-of-home and its growth. I think if you look at, but it's not just the formats, but it's also, if you think about the investment into out-of-home. So in the UK, it's about £1 billion £1 billion that's spent on out-of-home last year, and that's up 12% year on year. If you look at Europe in its entirety, it's about 9 billion that was spent last year, and it's predicted to grow to about 10 or 11 billion. So it's a real growth market, which shows you that actually it's a format and an area that clients want to put their money in.
And Rob, you are doing some work in the UK as well. So how would you define the current status of out-of-home?
Well, I guess in the UK, in particular for our projects that we're working on, it's really on the rideshare aspect of it, taxi cab aspect of it. There's a lot of room to grow in the UK market, specifically around like city councils need to have approval for each individual project you're doing. It takes a lot of time to actually get things off the ground there. compared to like the U.S. where it's like largely just open. You can pretty much do what you need to do, barring any content guidelines, things like that. For us, out of home, the way it's evolved over the past like 5 years or so, we've seen a huge shift of incorporating new technologies into the space. Programmatic didn't really exist pre-2020 for out of home. I mean, it did, but it really didn't work that well. Digital programmatic has been around for a very long time, but there's a big difference between a billboard on the side of a highway versus what's in your cell phone in that capacity. And so for us, what we've largely done is put as much data as we possibly can into our platform so that people can target either inside the car, or if they're targeting a static ad on the outside of the car, can drive literally value like attribution, digital retargeting, that type of things from those types of things. And when you do that, then you start to look at out of home as a centerpiece of your marketing strategy at large, where you can use that to be in front of or in the places that your customers are going to be, and then layer on a lot of the data that goes into that to drive like, I saw the ad, maybe an LED truck outside. Now I see the same ad on my Instagram account because I was exposed to that truck. That's the direction this is like all really moving in, and it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think there's a lot of different companies and players in the out-of-home industry that all see problems and ways to innovate in the industry. I'll speak to how we're innovating the out-of-home industry with Nicolytics and KiwiBot. So one of the problems we see with traditional out-of-home is the lack of first-person data. So with KiwiBot, we do activations. Like right now, we have a Future Plus branded KiwiBot that if you scan, you're entering your name for a drawing to get a potentially a free iPad, right? So we capture first-person data, and that allows the brand to then retarget that particular audience post-exposure in a measurable, effective way where they can truly measure revenue that came from that particular campaign. So I think that is something that's going to be critical as part of the ecosystem of technology enhancement in the industry. And yeah.
And I do love that little robot.
We all do.
So we've all talked, you've kind of spoke about smart technologies and digital becoming more of a focus. And I guess there is still a role for the traditional billboard. But how do you see that sort of the new digital move becoming more engaging with consumers? I mean, you've talked about how you can personalize things. But Jonathan, I'll start with you if that's okay. I'm sorry, we have to keep moving them up.
I mean, we got to understand first is out of home is, and again, it goes back to very traditional, right? It's exposure to your brand, right? Nowadays, we have, your usual person has so many different channels where they get the advertising from. You have social media, you have TV, you got pretty much everything else. I think for out of home and technology components right now, I was talking with actually Tony here, and there is a new version of out of home that are coming, right? So it's actually in the virtual world nowadays, where it allows you to like immerse yourself into an experience, but live something similar to a real life. And that's going to be also considered out of home. It's a different form of out of home. So as we evolve, I think the opportunities that we have, they're immersed, but we have to use technology no matter what, like especially AI, for example. I think it's a smart component to doing your media buying. At the same time, we still need to fight more for effectiveness on campaigns. I think brands are actually paying for campaigns that are not being executed properly. And it goes back to how many pieces of artwork would you need if you're doing a programmatic buy, right? So how much work is that going to take? And then media buyers, I believe I'm sorry I'm being honest, but at the times they're becoming a little lazy on buying media. Traditional buyers were more effective because they know what's going to work. Nowadays they're buying numbers. So I think as tools become more available, they make people smarter buys for brands. Out of home is going to evolve, and again, if you compare it with social media, we have such a bigger presence. The social media space, there's the same channels, but millions of users are using it, but you're competing in a space where it's so overpopulated, where you have Vugo, and talking, like you were saying, gamification, experiential, right? You can play a little game, scan the QR code, entered real-time data that is valuable for the brand and have an experience while at it. And then you finish your ride, and then you go to your restaurant or whatever you do. So it's evolving really nice, but it's going to take around. I don't give it more than 3 years where we're going to see some surprises and new companies coming up, and international markets. Europe is going to be heavy in the next few years.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of other media planners are lazy. We're not at Mediaplus, just so we're clear. No, I understand, but I agree with you. I think as a planner generally, or an agency that's focused on putting clients' money and investing it wisely, it's always like all advertising. It's all about understanding what you want to elicit as a response from the consumer you're trying to target. So what's the real behavior, real human truth that's going to connect them with whatever you're showing them? And that response could be direct, so actually going out and buying something or taking an action, or it could be emotional, loyalty, awareness, consideration, all those things. And I think that there'll always be a place for both. We've done campaigns with traditional out-of-home, although special builds, and we've turned around sales from declining companies, increased 20%, awareness 50%, etc. So it's quite a phenomenal way to do it. But we've also done the same with digital out-of-home, and actually that gives a lot more exciting opportunities. So really tying into things like traffic flow data, so extending the copy, making it longer when people are stuck in traffic, weather data, so changing the ad to serve a relevant. We work with a lot of pubs in the UK, it's very popular over there. So getting people into beer gardens is always a big thing. So it's using that data cleverly, and digital out-of-home allows you to do that.
I really love the concept of leveraging AI for out-of-home because, as mentioned, there's so much opportunity as far as media space that's available. But I think brands, the marketing teams, find it challenging to access that inventory because purely a labor output issue, right? And so leveraging AI and brand guidelines to create contextually relevant media, right? Whether that be based on proximity, weather, time of the day, and so forth, makes a whole lot of sense. And I think in order for us to drive change in the marketing world, it causes disruption. So, one of the ways we're causing disruption with the KiwiBot is we're activating it in valuable real estate, such as retail, right? So giving that brand that might have inventory in a Walmart last minute exposure at the point of sale, right? And then using that as a way to attribute sales lift.
Yeah, and just to add on to some of what Jonathan was saying and Bo was saying as well, especially on the buy side of things, there's a huge educational gap, I think, too, with a lot of advertisers and buyers understanding what is actually possible versus what they're actually doing. And we talked about this a week ago, where if an advertiser creates bad creative, I mean, that could impact a campaign just more than anything else. So even though you have all this access to data, if you're not leveraging the platform and the mediums correctly, it's going to have a huge impact on success. And so measurement of success with all the attribution and the technology we're putting into these things is extremely important. But if you're fundamentally not creating good creative or not creating a good output for the use of the medium, it's still going to have a bad result. And so I think a lot of what our roles are up here is to educate brands and media buyers on what's even possible in the first place for the medium. And so out of home, it's not just billboards. Obviously, it's a lot more than that. And everybody up here is doing pretty amazing things in that capacity. So
one of the things that I think is different in the US to the UK is the rideshare element and just how prevalent that is here. And obviously, that's a large part of your business. So how do you see that becoming sort of growing in the years? Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so with the rideshare space in particular, mobility at large is changing very, very fast. Originally it was taxi cabs, now it's rideshare. Now you have all these niche services out there that are servicing either like maybe large groups, like here in town we have Fetty. Other markets you might have some other thing that's doing a specific type of transportation. And so it's not just Uber and Lyft. I mean, Uber and Lyft is still important, but from an advertiser standpoint, the reason why all that matters is because when you're targeting people in car and people in motion, the physical space is the same, but the intent and the purpose of the trip is different every single time. And so using tools like Vugo or others in the space you can target individuals on what they're actually doing in route and going from point A to point B, whether they're going to, say, an airport or a hospital or a sports stadium or a bar. It's all very different spaces, and it's the same physical location in the vehicle. Where this is going long term is people are becoming passengers really more so than ever before. Waymo, all these self-driving car services that are out there, that's the future where things are headed, especially in urban environments. And so attention, that's really what it's all about for in-vehicle rideshare advertising and those types of things. You're capturing 20 to 30 minutes of dwell time in a car. I mean, no other medium really has that kind of dwell time in a car, or anywhere for that matter. And so as that evolves and that grows, leveraging data so you can actually target who you want to target in the vehicle, that's where that's going.
And Bo, for you, because we're at South by Southwest, I mean, every year we hear a lot of talk about smart cities and, of course, innovation, because that is the big thing about South by Southwest. But as those sort of connected environments becoming more and more a norm for us, how do you think that the out-of-home and the work that you guys do will integrate into these spaces? And what do you see for sort of more immersive ad experiences? Because obviously you've got the robot.
Yeah, so when I think about advertising, there's a lot of perhaps inefficiency just because there's a lot of opportunities to display ads in contextually relevant areas. And so with smart cities, right, we all imagine a sci-fi flying car, urban background, but how KiwiBot can tie into that is there's multiple use cases, right? So we partner with municipalities already, helping them to collect data, right? The robot has computer vision, so it's collecting data that is beneficial to that city, whether it's a pothole that might need addressing, right? So I think we can contribute to smart cities in the robotic space by helping the municipalities in that way collect data, but also from a marketing standpoint with brands is, broadcasting ads based on contextually relevant campaigns to where that robot is located. So if we have a robot in Victory Park, for example, in downtown Dallas, there's a prevalent 7-Eleven there. So, we can have a 7-Eleven advertisement directing foot traffic to purchase at that store, for example, right? Or branded for American airline experiences, concerts, sports, entertainment, and so forth.
I think the exciting thing for me especially is all the information and all the conversation around data and how we utilize data, collect data, interpret data. I think that's fundamental. And for smart cities, I think we're seeing more and more of that growth. And so at the moment we're talking about robots doing it. Soon it will be the roads will be doing it. There'll be signs in the bus stop will be serving you ads that are relevant to the journey you're going on. And so you'll have screens talking about pollution levels, talking about traffic flow levels, talking about all sorts of areas. So I think there's a real opportunity generally for not just out of home, but for councils in the UK to really embrace that and take that forward.
Yeah. So to add to everybody, obviously smart cities is a big component, and you talk about data, you talk about all the components that you can add to a city, from the moving to place space, but there is a very huge aspect that is overlooked, and it's a brand new economy, right? From a rideshare perspective, you have your Uber driver who can actually wrap his vehicle now and also have a screen and make extra money. From the robot, a little bit, but you can do different more. But for example, grocery store guys, now you can have a full-blown screen all through the stores and get extra revenue, which is usually shared revenue that you do with these operators, right? So it's a new economy that if you take a look to any city, it's gonna bring economy some way, somehow, right? It's just being overlooked, but if you promote it properly, just to give an example, imagine every company that does ride shares will have screens. Every single vehicle, right? All those people will be bringing extra money to their homes thanks to advertising. And there's plenty of opportunity. That's something that not a billboard will bring. So we create new economies everywhere we go as far as out of home. Everybody now has an opportunity to advertise at their home. I mean, I'm not even going to see it when you can have 10 TVs at your house and then they offer you Comcast or NBC comes and like, hey, can we advertise, use your TV, and they get revenue share from advertising. That's where the money's going. So I see it as a growth economy.
And Pedro, I mean, we've got a US heavy panel, and it's us two representing the UK. But I think it's really clear that the US is kind of is ahead of us in the UK. And I'm just wondering, what can we learn? What do you think the UK can learn from what is happening here in the US? And to the US panel, I say, to you, what do you think the UK can learn from you guys?
Well, I think it's a mutually beneficial learning opportunity. I think with the US, I think what they're very good at is going from ideation to activation in quite a short period of time. And so you're seeing this innovation coming out and going straight to market, which is brilliant. In the UK, as Rob, we talked about, there's a lot more regulation, and that's not even talking about GDPR. So it causes things to slow down. But also, vice versa, in the UK, I think we're doing a lot more in the measurement space. So measurement for us is not just about reach, frequency, coverage. It's using data, but it's also about understanding moods, people in, where they're going from, using mobile data, overlaying that, where they're going to, where they're coming from. But also we're playing in the field of synthetic data now to really understand and utilize and bolster what we know from the small panels that exist currently to measure out home. And that's really exciting because you can have a huge volume that's scalable, that delivers a lot of insight. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then the only other thing that I would say is the green space in the UK is obviously sustainability is fundamental. And I think it's like that in most places, but I feel like we're doing a lot in that space there as well.
I guess for what we can learn about out of home from U.S. companies for the UK application is for us it's all about data, in my opinion. For Vugo in particular, we work with ride shares obviously and put screens in the back of the cars and have the ability to get very granular and contextual data about those trips. And when you transfer that over to Europe, there's a lot of privacy concerns that go into that. So how do you make sure that's not encroaching on somebody's privacy, so that if you see an ad on the side of a wrap or inside of a car, and then you see it later pop up on Instagram on your feed, you're not going, well, how did this get here? There's a lot of privacy around the data that is kind of the Wild West a little bit in the US in terms of what we can and can't do that you just don't see in Europe due to GDPR and other regulations in that regard. I'd say that's the big one is how do you kind of thread the needle, so to speak, on the sweet spot where it's not invasive on privacy and making sure that it's still effective for advertisers so they can actually get their messaging where they want to have their messaging at and have the attribution to go with that. So that's a big challenge, I think, for US going to UK, but it's a learning process that has to be I think resolved still.
Obviously the UK is operating with tighter constrictions from consumer privacy. I see that as an opportunity for engineering because you're obviously going to innovate around those constrictions. And so although the US right now, our restrictions in the advertising and consumer privacy space aren't as tight, regulatory things by nature, they fluctuate, right? So there could be a period in time in the US where we have and adopt the same sort of privacy laws. And then we can learn from the UK from that. The US, I think a lot has already been said, but the US, obviously, we're data heavy. And I think that the constrictions the UK has is an opportunity, actually. So, yeah.
I only see opportunity. Obviously, regulatory, when it comes to regulations, European countries, even Latin American countries can be very heavy on that, right? But regulation is only good until you figure out a way how to work with the country and actually have some benefit back to either giving taxes or, some sort of benefit, right? Even PSAs and things like that can play a huge role, or law enforcement can play a huge role when implementing new products into a new country. But really, if you really take a look, you're looking at whole different animals, right? United States is very innovative, right? We're huge. We have multiple markets, right? Compared to the UK, right? So it doesn't matter what you innovate here. Every other country, if it does good here, is more likely to be welcomed properly or better or easier in any other country, right? but everything is in the caveat, right? So the bad thing of the U.S. is like the rates are way lower than anywhere in the world. You know, so if you have a good product here and you figure it out how to do it in the UK, and I think the UK has a ton of opportunity when it comes to moving out of home and place-based media, right? Yeah, you have a data component, which is very important, but it doesn't have to be data at all times, right? It's effectiveness, right? It's all perception how we provide our products, and we sell them. So I think it's a huge, not only in the UK, in other European countries, where, you know, with the right message, the right innovation, the right partnerships, you know, the opportunity is there. So I only see opportunity.
Nobody wants you to miss the opportunity, Jonathan. And I guess you've kind of all hit upon data, innovation, and trust. And in the UK, there was a survey where it showed that the advertising industry was less trusted than politicians. That is not the case at the moment. However, it does make me. So I guess my question to you all is, with items becoming more personalised, with you know, if I look at myself, my individual data becoming more used, how do you think that the out-of-home or the moving out-of-home industry is going to kind of marry that to ensure that, as a consumer, there's still a level of trust there that makes sure that your businesses are all successful?
So I think, for me, it falls into two categories: cool or creepy. It's simple as that. And everything that you've heard here, all cool. We do great things in terms of personalization. So with this technology that exists that can identify car makes and models and serve an ad to that driver, a service or new upgrade of a car or whatever it is, that's great personalization. That's cool. There was a campaign with a dogs charity to try and get more dogs adopted. And they were large shopping area handing out leaflets for those who were interested with an RFID chip in there. And then when they went past the poster site, it would activate a poster that relates to the dog. Perfect. Again, cool. Then you got things like Minority Report, who's familiar with the film, where he walks past the poster, it calls out his name, and serves him an ad of something that he's seen or browsed. That's creepy. I think post is still a one-to-many medium. It's not a one-to-one yet. There's lots of innovation, and we've talked about that. You know, connecting to the mobile phones and serving content that way. That's fantastic. You know, so I think we'll see a lot more of that sort of collaboration and connection between devices, and whether it's digital out of home or whether it's mobile devices. So yeah, for me, that's it.
To add to that, I think a lot of the mistrust that the advertising industry gets, largely by market share, comes from online ads. It's a lot more easy to launch an online ad on Instagram. I can do one as, you know, the panel's speaking right now. Very low, cost effective. You can launch one for like $20. Out of home, I think, is a much more trustworthy format because the brands that invest tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in that format tend to be more legitimate, right? And out of home has processes, at least on the digital out of home front, I can speak to, where we review each creative that's submitted, right? So certain industry, whether it's adult, alcoholic, gambling, in some cases, they're not approved, right? So with Nicolytics, we have a self-service digital out-of-home platform that allows brands to launch billboard campaigns in minutes, hours. And a lot of times when I'm reviewing that, the operations, there's users trying to submit harmful or wrong content, and that immediately gets flagged in our system, as well as the media publishers they're trying to broadcast to. So, I think largely there's a law of diminishing returns with online ads, and people, as consumers, will become less and less receptive to those products. But out of home, we're all good.
Yeah, and with that train of thought on that, I mean, the trust aspect on the out-of-home world, it's generally bigger brands because you're larger ad buys. It's not a $20 ad spend on Instagram or whatever it might be. And you also have the fact that, 60% of online traffic is bots. It's not even real. Out-of-home is a really good medium for brands because they're able to actually meet customers in the real world where they're actually at versus, did somebody see my ad or was it a bot? So it kind of goes both ways in that capacity for it. But with that trust component, a lot of it just comes down to, are you being creepy or are you respectfully delighting customers on pathway journeys or customer journeys as they move from point A to point B. Because in our world, we're able to do a full customer journey from point A to point B. If somebody hops in an Uber or a Lyft and has one of our screens in it, we can greet them with some messaging, say, hey, you know, are you headed to, say, the Xperia House to see one of the CTV screens here? We can have that full journey from point A to point B and then continue that journey after the fact because we already know who that passenger was in the car, and they can have a really robust experience with whatever they're doing. That's very contextual and very, very relevant. I mean, to me, that's not creepy. That's actually really, it's fun to have that kind of experience happen. But that's the kind of the education piece with these brands, is making sure that they're aware of how to actually utilize these tools so that they're making effective campaigns that's useful and delightful for the customer as opposed to creepy.
So I'm with Bo on this one, totally, because I think out-of-home needs to be separate, right? When you're talking about mistrust in advertising companies or advertisers, it really comes from TV, radio, and online. When it comes to out-of-home, obviously there are ads that shouldn't be there, and then you're right, we do have mostly the companies do have a very strong approval process. But at the same time, out-of-home, I think, is the least intrusive in many ways. Not that we're not intrusive, but it's the least intrusive. And at the same time, we don't play a lot into politics. Yes, there is political ads and all that stuff. It happens. But it's the least choice to drive decision-making process. It's the last resource, actually, for political campaigns in many different capacities. They use out-of-home as the last resource. They go to online. So I think the mistrust comes from like what you see on TV, what you're being targeted on. Out-of-home, even you can target, but it's very hard to really know who you are. It's like out-of-home doesn't discriminate as much, I think.
Thank you very much. Our time is up, but I would like you to give a round of applause to the panel.
Thank you, thank you.
And because
Thanks.
you might want to ask them a few more questions, and I'm sure they're going to hang about, so you can definitely go and speak to them. But also a special thank you to the Future House team for letting us come here today.